Live, so if you would give us a start, that'd be great.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I'm not Bob Koppel, but I will try to do my best to get us started and so we can hopefully stay on time. My name is Jason Smith and with the Manhattan Area Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to our monthly Manhattan Area Recovery Task Force meeting. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Since our meeting in March, things are trending in the right direction, particularly with the number of vaccines being administered throughout the community. Last week, the governor reissued 13 COVID-19 related executive orders as they were set to expire March 31st, but under a new law and process, the state legislature can reject the governor's orders, which they did, but only for her order for mandatory face coverings. Despite the disagreement between the governor and the legislature, local governments are still able to issue their own health orders, including mandatory face coverings. Riley County issued health order number 21 on March 25th, which basically continued the mask ordinance throughout Riley County, but outside the city limits. The mandated mask ordinance for both Riley County and the city of Manhattan run through May 16. And the city extended theirs also, which I think most of you knew. Kansas is seeing a slight increase in COVID cases like other states, but we are still seeing relatively low numbers in the Manhattan region. In yesterday's report, the health department reported 27 new positive cases and 22 additional recoveries since the last report on March 31st. The really good news is that the percent of positive cases for the week of March 28 was 1.1%. That translates to 20 of the 1,787 tests performed coming back positive. This is the 10th week in a row that Riley County has seen the percent of positive cases below 5%. While this is good news, everyone is on the lookout for the changing variants and seeing how it might interact with our vaccines. We have a lot of information to share in this meeting, so we want to start our meeting with the roll call. And so I am going to turn it over to Dennis.
We're going to do our famous roll call. So if anyone wants to unmute and give a spring break hello, and I call your name, that would be great. I know a couple more people are coming in to join us in the meeting here. Let's start the roll call. We've got Jason Smith, Carla Hagemeister, is she on here? Lisa Sisley.
Here.
Alice Massimi.
Here.
Robin Cole.
Yes, I'm here.
Dennis Butler.
Good afternoon.
Mike Dodson. Dennis Cook.
Yes, I'm here.
Gina Scroggs.
I'm here.
Mickey Dean. Kara Hawley. Kelly Laub.
Present.
Cheryl Grice. Shiloh Heeger.
I'm here.
Fannie Fain.
I'm here.
Karen Hibbard.
Present.
Lonnie Baker. Commissioner John Ford.
Present.
Commissioner Dee McKee. Commissioner Keith Asher. Julie Gover Walter. Kelly Pascal. Lieutenant Colonel Terry Kelly. How about Steve Elstrom?
Present. Neither of the Fort Riley reps are available except myself.
Well, glad you're here to join us. Thank you. And Bern Hendricks.
I'm here.
Great. I know we have a couple of guests that we'll introduce later on. Plus we have Ron Fear, Chrissy Rodriguez, and Marissa is on here. So if I miss anyone, let me know, but thank you all for joining us. That completes the roll call for today.
All right, thank you, Dennis. Let me know if you see Bob, and because it's hard for me to watch the screen and keep up with the information. So there are, I think most of you recognize the status of vaccines is significantly different today than it was a month ago. It feels like that what we're hearing from our providers is they're readily available. So we see a lot of vaccines coming into the community from the health department and to local pharmacies. Vaccine appointments are now open to all Raleigh County residents who have not yet been vaccinated and are over the age of 18. To date, Raleigh County Health Department has only received Moderna and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Both can only be administered to those 18 years or older. Our hope is that we continue to see a lot of interest throughout the community of residents wanting to get their shot. As Alice is with Raleigh County is with us today to give us an update on the local health order, plus the status of vaccine distribution throughout the community. So Alice, do you want to give us our update?
Yeah, sure. I think a lot of my update actually you covered already, Jason, from the press releases that we've released with the numbers. But just to review, to date, we have fully vaccinated over 11,776 people. We have an additional 7,512 people who have received dose 1 of 2 and are waiting to receive that second dose. Starting next week, all of our first doses will be administered at the health department, and we will only be at Potterf Hall on Thursdays and sometimes Fridays for those booster second shots. And the reason why we're staying out there is because we have very large numbers that will need those boosters from previous week clinics that had several hundred people that we vaccinated in a day. By mid-May, we will have those individuals, those large groups that need second doses, vaccinated with their second dose. So I think it's the week of May 5th, we will be moving all of the vaccine efforts to the health department. They'll be at FCRC, which is the Family Resource Center over there. In the back parking lot, there's a tent up, and people can go online right now and schedule those appointments. So it's an open system right now. You can just go online, you register your name, your information, and then you'll be taken to a screen to schedule your appointment. Right now, we're scheduling 2 to 3 weeks out. First doses are being offered on Monday through Wednesday from 9 to 12 and 1 to 4. And then the second doses will be offered on Thursdays and Fridays. I think most of you are probably familiar by now with the local health order, since that was, I think, 2.5 weeks ago. So we're on local health order 21 right now, and what that did was that extended the mask mandate to May 16th. That was something that the EOC came to a decision would be the safest bet for our community, and also give us some wiggle room to get more individuals vaccinated, and also give K-State a chance to have their graduation, and for those students to start to head home for the summer. We will have the well health testing has been extended to May 28th, and then at that point they will leave the ACS site, and we will be shutting down the ACS site at the end of May, preferably. They've been seeing about 25 to 30 individuals coming through there for tests per day. What we will be doing as a county is letting people know that there's a variety of other places to get tested, including the health department, doctor's offices, Lafine, and we'll be providing a list so that people have other options on locations of where to get tested. And that's kind of where we're at with the vaccine clinic and that. And I think the stats for the number of cases Jason read earlier that we released yesterday, and our percent positive that we released yesterday in the press release. But I'm happy to answer any other questions if y'all have them on behalf of the EOC.
Hi, Alice. Kelly Laub here. So you say, I guess, essentially beginning of June, people will be able to go to their doctor's offices to get tested for COVID. Is that correct?
So they've been able to do that if they're symptomatic. They've been able to go to their doctor's offices to get tested.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Alice? Alice, I apologize for stealing your report.
Oh, no, that's fine. No. I just wanted to everybody know I didn't have tons because a lot of that information was in you. I'm not going to repeat you.
I gotcha. Bob's with us. Bob, did you have any comments in regards to vaccinations that you wanted to add?
Other than just continuing to encourage people to, whatever your county of residence is, to get signed up, get that done.
And I don't know, Alice, is it fair to say that vaccinations are flowing well throughout the community and the state now?
I don't know about the state. I will say this area, we're definitely hitting a lag. So that's part of the reason why we're able to move to the health department, because we're just not getting the interest in the community to get vaccinated. I know we gave Via Christi 400 doses for Saturday, and I believe, Bob, you only have about 100 people signed up, right? So there's just, from what we're hearing also anecdotally, Lafine is having the same issue. You know, we're getting the supply in, but we're just not getting people wanting to get vaccinated. So that's kind of the next effort that the health department and myself are going to be undertaking, is trying to encourage people to get vaccinated, and trying to convince those who are on the fence that it's for the betterment of everybody in the community to get vaccinated. We had a Facebook Live yesterday. We had Dr. Sagan Chase and Dr. Weber on to answer community's questions. There's a lot of myths out there about the vaccine, so we're working to kind of correct that. I know that's something Lafine is working on, but unfortunately, there's just not the people right now. And so we estimate in Riley County, about 25,000 doses have been administered. That's between us and all the other pharmacies. Now, those doses could have been administered to people that live in Clay County or Pot County or Geary County. So it's hard to say that there's 25,000 people from Riley County that have been vaccinated. But we still have a pretty significant amount of people to vaccinate in Riley County to kind of reach that herd immunity space. So if we encourage you all to encourage those that you know and those that you work with to get vaccinated.
I think as a community, we're probably somewhere around 30%. And to actually feel like the community is protected, we need to be somewhere in the range of 80+%. I actually saw somebody in our local community earlier this week. I saw a letter that they'd written or whatever, and said, now that our community is fully vaccinated. And I was like, I wonder which community they were talking about, because it's not Riley County.
No.
And it's just, again, I really, this is going to be a future economic driver. We've started to see variant activity in our county, and other parts of the country. You look like at Michigan and some of the East Coast states, they're going back to where they were a couple months ago. And we always have a couple weeks time frame between the coast and something getting here, even with illness like COVID. And so really the next 2 weeks are pivotal. This is a great way to not have a bump if we can get people to get vaccinated in the next 2 weeks.
And I think to your point, Bob, that I saw 5 states were responsible for half the positive cases reported last week, I think. So you're right, there are spikes in certain states.
And I think even by Monday, you're going to see that list is probably doubled. We're starting to see just a little bit of a bump in Kansas, not huge, but it's starting.
Bob, do you know how that 30% compares? I think I saw somewhere nationally it's a little over 20%. So we are at least leading the nation, or ahead of where the national numbers are.
So yeah, actually, again, our little region tends to, even within the state of Kansas, be a little bit better. That's kind of been our trajectory actually on most indicators for the last year. It's just, again, keeping that and staying there. And it's just a matter of literally, we got another 20-some thousand, 30,000 people that we would ideally get vaccinated in the next 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. And then that positions you to, there's always going to be those who are kind of late to arrive. And that's how you finally get to the 80%. We've seen that with our own staff. Out of the gate right away, well over 50%. Then we got over 60%. And then it took January and February. Now we're over 70%. And it's just, you just got to kind of keep following that and working on it.
So I think the thing to remember is, if you want a vaccination now, you can get a vaccination now, correct? If you're over 18.
So supply has gotten ahead of delivery at this point. It's the exact opposite of even 4 weeks ago.
Okay. Karen, did you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. I'm assuming that that there's a way that we're keeping track of folks as they get vaccinated. If they get vaccinated at say they get vaccinated at their pharmacy and then they've signed up with Riley County Health and they get their second vaccination there. That's still all compiled that you've got folks that are fully vaccinated, even though they've maybe jumped around, right?
Yeah, through the state has got a platform called WebIZ that everybody that is administering state allotted doses has to put information in there. And so, of course, we are not encouraging people to jump around just because of allotments. That makes it pretty sticky, because if you got your first dose at Dunn's, well, Dunn is now getting your second dose there.
Right.
We're not getting your second dose. So if you come up to us for a second dose, you're in theory taking a second dose away from somebody else. So we're trying to get people to wherever you got that first dose, get your second dose at that same spot. But yeah, we're tracking all of those individuals. And I would say too, that if anybody has any ideas or would like to hold a vaccine clinic, has a great idea of where to hold a vaccine clinic where they think they might be able to get a population that maybe is not being reached, please let us know. We have the RADx Up team, which is a national grant from NIH to serve the underserved populations throughout the nation. We have 2 women that were hired on for the RADx Up grant, and at first they were doing testing in underserved areas. Now they're doing vaccine clinics. So they were the ones that were responsible for the clinic in Ogden, the one in Leonardville last week, and then we'll have 2 clinics in Manhattan this week. We'll have one at the Douglas Center on Friday, and then we'll have one at the First United Methodist Church, I believe it is, and that's on Monday. And so the goal there is to get some of the individuals that are lower income going to those clinics, and then also hit up some of the Spanish-speaking communities, the rural communities. So any ideas that you have, we are open to them, because I think Bob would agree, at the end of the day, we just want to get shots in arms. So we're working on this next effort now that we're able to kind of wind down the vaccine clinic operation, at least out at Podorf. But we are open to partnerships and any ideas individuals might have.
Hi, Alice. This is Julie Govert-Walter. And I was just wondering if someone has done a breakdown of in the age categories. I'm interested in finding out how many and what % of our population age 60 plus has had the vaccine shot. Wondering if you or somebody has that information.
I think we might be able to get that through WebIZ. I can check with Julie. I mean, I know that based on census information that we got through Riley County, that a majority of those 65 and older have been vaccinated in Riley County, just based on our own data that we collected. But I can get you that information if you can provide me your email address, Julie. I don't know that we've communicated in the past.
Sure. And then I also had another question. I'm wondering if we are, or if all the places doing vaccinations are giving out those little cards that let people have, as proof, I guess I'll say, of their vaccination.
I think everybody is. I know we are. I haven't heard of anybody not getting a card. I think that's kind of mandated. Bob, do you know an answer to that?
So there are some other folks in the state who are not using those cards, but everybody, I think, in Riley County is.
Okay, thank you.
And again, that's just a consistency thing. I just think it's probably the best thing to do, is we all stick with the little white cards.
I agree. Alice, I'll reach out to you and we can talk about the numbers and some other stuff.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks.
Okay.
I did have a quick question on the vaccine card. I did see something floating around on some news sources and didn't really fact check it, so I apologize for bringing it up without fact checking it. But there's some messaging going out of asking people to not share their vaccine card on social media, and I know at least in kind of the demographic I'm in and the folks that I have on social media and so on, it's a very popular thing to do. So I don't know if we need to work on possibly messaging to not have people do that if it truly is an issue. I don't know if it's as big of an issue as some of those news articles made it out to seem. It might not be, but I don't know if there's messaging that we need to kind of consider for that if it truly is an issue. but just thought I might bring that up.
I think it's just like social media security. It's kind of just generic security. It's the same reason why you shouldn't go on Facebook and answer those 20 questions about where you met your husband, what your favorite food is, because they're using that to guess your password. And I don't know, Bob, if you have anything to add to that. I think it's just social security information. Well, there's not social security, but it's security on social media.
I don't know if Dennis Butler maybe has a thought too. So really the only information obviously on there is your name, and then it has the lot number of the vaccine that you got. I don't know that what use that would be to anybody, but and the dates you got it, I don't know. Again, I think early on we encourage people not to do that because you had all this kind of nitpicking going back and forth about why did Bob get to go ahead of Marissa. And if you don't post on social media, nobody's going to know that Bob was in line before Marissa. You know, now that the door is open to everybody, I don't know if that's as big a deal. I don't know, Dennis, do you have any, I was just sorry to put you on the spot, but any other thoughts about from a security or personal security standpoint?
I haven't received any intelligence bulletins about this issue, but in general, when you're using social media, you should refrain from sharing anything personal about your life. I know that cuts out a lot of social media uses, but anything that can be used the way Alice described is something you shouldn't do. But I did have my hand up for a question for Alice. Since I have the floor, let me ask it real quick. Alice, you gave a lot of information about locations, times, dates for vaccinations. Is this same information found on the Riley County Health Department website? So as I encourage people, I can just direct them there to find all of these different options for them if they want to go get vaccinated.
Yeah, so it's on the Riley County website. We have a coronavirus page, so people can go there. Also, every Wednesday, we've cut the press releases down to once a week now. We're also releasing all that information in the press releases. And the press release is actually going to have your most up-to-date information, including your stats. And then also the health department Facebook page is a great place to follow that, because if we have any last minute changes like Leonardville, we were supposed to be vaccinating individuals in the church, and they went in the church and there was bats. So we had to move to the community center very quickly. So we put that update on Facebook. So we have it in a variety of locations.
Thanks. I just was looking for a one-stop shop for people to go to explore their options. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Alice, thank you for being with us today.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for having me.
So we're down to talk about federal stimulus update. At our March meeting, the president had just signed the.
Hey, Jason, can we change that order and go to the next item?
Go to the child care. Yeah. Okay, sure can. Okay, let me catch up here. At our last meeting and at some earlier meetings, we've had conversations related to childcare and the ongoing struggle families have been having to not only find available programs during the pandemic, but that are also affordable. This was a problem last year when many summer programs for youth were canceled. With the lifting of many of the health order provisions, we're seeing more childcare summer programs being offered. To give us some information about child and youth summer programs, I am pleased to introduce Riva. Riva, I don't want to butcher your last name. Would you pronounce that for me?
That's okay. It's Waiwatis.
Waiwatis, okay. Riva Waiwatis with Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas to talk about her organization and give us some insight on summer activity for youth in our region. So thank you for being with us today, Riva, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, thank you for this opportunity. I am with Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas. We are based out of Topeka, but we actually help parents throughout the state of Kansas find childcare in their local communities. So we do serve your area. We are licensed by the state of Kansas as a child care resource and referral agency. And what that means is we don't recommend one program over the other. We give parents all the options and let parents choose the program that they feel is best for them and their child. We do make referrals only to licensed programs. So particularly when you're thinking about summer care, sometimes a church will have a week-long summer camp. those kinds of programs are not licensed, so we would not be giving families referrals to those. But most of your full summer programs and then extension programs that are offered by regulated programs, of course, are already licensed. So we're happy to help connect families with that care. I will say that we're all still hearing more and more about what the summer is going to look like. And so whether or not there will be enough capacity for all the kids needing stuff to do this summer is yet to be seen. But I would just say to you as community members that as these conversations take place, if there are licensed camps opening up, to make sure that you encourage them to connect with us so that we know that they're in operation and we can help families find them. As far as overall childcare, you are not alone in your comments about lack of capacity. This is a real challenge, not just in Riley County, but throughout the entire state of Kansas. Infant and toddler care particularly is in very, very short supply. And so as an agency, I wish I had an answer to that, but I will just tell you that if this is a challenge that as a community you feel like you want to address, and many, many communities are having these conversations because they know that childcare capacity really is an economic development issue. You can't bring business into your community if those families with young children can't find childcare. So we are partnering with many communities in our region to just be at the table, be a part of those conversations, provide data, provide research, talk about things that are happening in other states that might serve as a model for a local community. So if we can assist in any of those conversations, we certainly would love to be included and a part of that. Again, I wish I had an easy answer and I don't, but I would love to be part of the solution as you all are brainstorming about what you might want to do in your own community. So I will tell you that just as of today, we just ran a report of the licensed programs that are in operation, and we show there's 134 open slots in Riley County for school-age kids. So that certainly won't accommodate everybody that will need care this summer, but at least it's a starting point. So I would be happy to answer any questions if anyone has them.
Reeve, I have a question.
Yes.
The last community I worked in, I was on a local labor task force where one of the challenges for the community was finding suitable and abundant daycare for a variety of professions. And one of the needs that was identified, and initially there was some work being done on it, but then it was derailed, was finding two different types of childcare niches. One was sick childcare, where employees were not sick, but their child might have a case of the sniffles or something not real serious, but the parent would have to stay home with the child instead of having a child care option called sick child care is what they phrased it. The other one was 24/7 child care for those workers who work overnight or on weekends, not necessarily holidays, but folks that routinely work those hours. And initially, the local hospital and child care function with the local school district, because they taught early childhood education, were working on a solution for that, and it didn't pan out. Are you aware of any options like that in the state, or any models like that that could be explored or adopted here?
I'll just share a little bit, and then I'm happy to try and get some more relevant information. Sick child care, I know here in Topeka, Stormontvale Hospital had a program for a few years. They called it Color Me Well, and it was a program that the hospital actually operated that allowed a parent to bring their child, I think it was part of the pediatric wing, for exactly what you described. The child was ill, the parent needed to go to work. The program did not survive long term because of the cost. Parents wanted to be able to purchase sick child care for the same cost that they paid for regular care. And of course, the hospital just couldn't operate at that cost margin. the challenge, there's a lot of challenges around this. One is if you take a sick child into a childcare facility, you're potentially exposing everyone else. And then I think the other challenge is just that when a child is really sick, they really want to be with a family member, somebody that they know and that they're comfortable with, not taken to a place where they've never been before. And so it is a very difficult and challenging situation. I have to personally believe that what we've learned in the last year about remote work may provide some additional flexibility for family, for parents that maybe do need to stay home with their child, but their child's going to be vegging out on the couch, and hopefully they can still participate at least some in their regular work day. But that is a tough one. That is a very difficult one. I think some of this conversation also has to go back to employers thinking about how they support their workforce that has young children. And I know, there are days that things just have to happen. But again, if there is a positive to what we've learned in the last year, it is about being adaptable and flexible and understanding that, maybe my workday today isn't going to be from 8 to 5. Maybe I'm going to log on at 4 o'clock when my husband gets home to watch my child, and I'm going to get my work done in the evening. So those family-friendly workplace policies, I think, are going to be more and more important as employers think about retaining their workforce with young kids. The other issue you brought up, the 24/7 childcare, is another one that I think there's been different experiments, if you will. I think what the overall long-term data would show is that overnight care is typically, in most situations, not all, but typically handled by family. One of the challenges with overnight care in a regulated childcare program is the caregiver has to stay awake. So even if a family childcare provider might say that they would do overnight care, the kids could sleep, but the provider would be required by licensing to stay awake all night. And so it's just not something that people want to sign on to do necessarily on a regular basis. Probably more in demand and still very challenging is what we would term non-traditional hours of care. So that evening shift, anything after 6 p.m. and weekends. And typically, often those are families that are working retail, that are, working fast food. They have to work till 8, 9, 10 o'clock, and evening and weekend care is very difficult, very hard to come by. So one of the things we are doing as an agency is putting together some messaging for our current childcare providers, just trying to increase their awareness of the need and the demand for that, and trying to get them to consider whether they might be willing to take, if they're a family childcare provider, maybe they would be willing to keep one child 2 or 3 evenings a week to help that one family that needs that non-traditional hours of care. And there's huge tax benefit to the family childcare provider for doing that. But a lot of times when they think about evening care, they're thinking about staying open with 7 or 8 children until midnight every night, and they may or may not want to go down that path. So it is a huge need. We're also hearing from some employers that are wanting to consider on-site childcare for their workforce that may or may not have, again, wanted to explore that option before. And that's another role that we can play, is if an employer is interested in learning more about that, we can sure provide some information and resources to guide that discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other comments? Kelly?
I had a question, Riva. I'm curious, how does it break down for an hourly wage for a child care provider? Essentially, how much does a child care provider make an hour?
I can actually send you a report. Child Care Aware of Kansas does a report every 2 or 3 years about the wages in childcare, and they're pretty start to say abysmal, but I don't know if that's the right word. They make very low wages. And I think that's one of the challenges in this field is particularly child care center staff. Most of them can make more if they go to work for Walmart than they can doing childcare, and often they don't have any benefits at their childcare facility. So in family childcare, where they're operating out of their home, their overhead, they're going to have a house payment whether or not they're doing childcare. There are some really good tax advantages if they take full advantage of that. And so they can fare better, but they also tend to work really long hours. So, a 60-hour work week for a family childcare provider is pretty typical. So then if you take the money coming in the door, you back out all the expense, the food, and all the costs it takes to care for, 4, 6, 8 children, and then divide it by 60 hours in a week. Again, not typically making, big money, but often people do it just because they have a heart. They love kids. Often they want to stay home with their own children. That's what kept me in that field for 12 years. So again, I think part of our job as a child care resource and referral agency is to make sure that people know that family child care is a viable career choice. And if they're a stay-home mom and the idea of caring for another 1 or 2 children is something that they would consider, that would go a long way to taking some of the pressure off of communities, particularly around infant and toddler care. So we're trying to kind of get that word out. Not everyone wants to work with young children and be around young children all day, every day. But for people that have a heart for it, we want them to know that there's help out there and support to help them get started and be successful at operating their own business.
Then I guess just one last question. What age, childcare age group do you find is the most needed? Is it from, 6 weeks to, 3 years, before they can qualify for preschool, or is it just across the board?
It depends a lot on the community, but certainly infant and toddler care is the most needed. Infant care in a center is, that's 6 weeks to 12 months and walking. That's considered an infant. And the staff-child ratios are much lower. So it's 1 caregiver for every 3 babies. And that is part of why there's such a shortage. It's the most expensive kind of care to offer, and it's clearly in demand. And then that toddler care from 12 to 20 months in that is the next most expensive. So, but definitely infant care is very, very hard to come by.
Okay, any other questions? Well, Reva, thank you again for being with us today. We appreciate the information, and
thank you for the opportunity. And if anyone has any other questions, I can certainly share my contact information, or just Google Child Care Aware of Eastern Kansas and you'll get our Topeka address and information. So I'm happy to help. And if childcare conversations continue in your community and we can assist in any way, just please let us know. Christy Rodriguez is on our board of directors, so she can also connect you with us. So thank you so much.
Great.
Right.
Thank you, Reva.
Okay, so back to federal stimulus. As we said at the March meeting, the president just signed the American Rescue Plan, which authorized the latest congressional action to help address the economic impacts of COVID and stimulate the economy. The components of that are coming out on a daily basis, and we're trying to learn all the different elements of that. There is a lot of money in this bill, as Dennis said, for basically everyone. States, local governments, private sector employers, nonprofits, specific organizations, as well as most Americans through the individual stimulus checks and support for rental assistance, as well as some other items. So to give us the latest update, I've asked Dennis to walk through some information he received from National League of Cities and the American Recovery Plan. So Dennis.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Um, One of the unique things about the American Rescue Plan, yes, it does have a stimulus component for individuals, kind of the third round from what was done for the previous two stimulus rounds. But really, for the first time for local governments, this is the first time that direct money's come to local governments. And so a lot of our professional organizations, the National League of Cities, the International City County Managers Association, and others are trying to give us some guidance for local government because the county is due an allocation from a pot of money. Cities are doing allocation. Different communities above 500,000 are getting allocations again. And so this is really kind of the first time for local governments. And there's some parameters around that. But when you think about 1.9 trillion being distributed in the stimulus plan, there's a lot of components to it. And so what we're finding, at least on the local government side, is the initial information that we're getting is that half of the money that has been determined to go to each local municipality or county will be coming by the end of May. And so, for instance, roughly, we don't have the final numbers now, but roughly 14 million will come to the city of Manhattan, 14 million will come to Riley County. And so we should see about half of that, 7 million each by the end of May. And then we will get the final distribution a year from now. And so we're just trying to understand, kind of like we did the CARES Act, what all is eligible. And so the National League of Cities here is kind of outlined some things. I'm going to zip through these first couple pages, because this is just talking about how it helps us stabilize our government operations from when local governments lost revenue and different things during the COVID pandemic and how we had to take on some additional expenses. And so really this applies to some of the local government, but what I want to highlight is there's a lot more in this for the whole spectrum, starting here with transportation funding. For our region, this could be for ATA. Hopefully we'll get a lot of transit funding, but as you'll see, even aviation, our local Manhattan Regional Airport received some funds. They'll receive some more funds from this, which will be very beneficial as our enplanements, the number of travelers has decreased over the last year. But even for those communities across the country who have rail and Amtrak, they're seeing some money added to their operations based upon this American Rescue Plan. Getting into it more specifically, we saw during past CARES Acts or stimulus funds, there was a lot of support for rent and mortgage assistance, eviction issues. Those things remain. We saw a lot of information related to broadband and how we can increase connectivity. That remains. We'll also see some school districts, universities, also similar to past distributions, will receive some money. But here again, there's just a lot of programs that they're rolling out through the Federal Transit Administration. And so we are looking as a city to see what we can apply for with ATA to see if there's some things that we can also tap into from these additional funds that are kind of parsed out by different departments of the federal government. As we'll see here, kind of getting into the nuts and bolts about public health and safety. Of course, a lot of the impetus for this 1.9 trillion was to, again, help with recovery of the pandemic. So a lot of these things for public health, I think a lot of people will be pleased to see a lot of the information goes to behavioral health. That's for education and training. You see here, a lot of this will be done through block grants. And so a lot of this is going to be working with Department of Health and Human Services, how that translates to the state, different departments, or how different agencies and regional providers can apply directly to the federal government for these different block grants. Some of these things are using existing channels like community development block grants. Some of those have been enhanced, but some of these are totally new programs. And so a lot of these things for businesses in particular, we'll get into the Small Business Administration. We'll have some new grant programs that they'll be doing. But if you look through this, substance abuse prevention and treatment, there's a block grant, local behavioral health needs, and this is significant money. And so we do see a lot of opportunities for the organizations involved in the Recovery Task Force, but in our local Manhattan community as well, can tap into these. And so we're just trying to get smarter as the local government staff to see what is available so we can help encourage others to apply for those funds as we hear about them. Even when you see the Youth Suicide Prevention Grants, again, that's a significant $20 million to be distributed across the country based on need. The certified community behavioral health clinics. They're getting some significant amount of money. And so even when you see the 7.6 billion for the public health workforce, that kind of continues some of the expenses of public health departments that have been reimbursed in the past will continue to be reimbursed going forward by counties and others who are utilizing their public health departments for the pandemic response. Again, when you look at the public safety emergency management has been a key lead in a lot of these. So FEMA disaster, we have the emergency food and shelter program. There's a couple of agencies in Manhattan and certainly across Kansas that have been the beneficiary of annual distributions from the emergency food and shelter program. That's being ramped up to $400 million. So there should be some significant work in terms of our homeless shelters and some of those who are serving the homeless population. Again, here's something new, the funeral assistance to individuals. There's some significant funding in there through FEMA that will assist those who've lost loved ones due to COVID and weren't able to cover some of the funeral costs. My understanding on that particular one is that people can go back and retroactively apply for funding if they did funeral services that were related to COVID deaths. So there's a lot of information in there. And this is where we get into the housing. Again, a lot of money, $21 billion for emergency rent relief. And again, utility for those who have water, electric, other issues, gas expenses, particularly in rural housing areas, that's available. Homeowner mortgage, again, the assistance. If there are some people who are falling behind because of job situations on property taxes. Now this is an included category. Again, not exactly sure how these are being distributed or funded through what agency. It may be CDBG, Housing Urban Development again, but still trying to find out the criteria and parameters. But we know that the bill includes this amount of resources for different people in need. Again, homeless is getting a significant amount of money when you look about the homeless assistance programs and then the housing vouchers. That's a key component for a lot of our homeless programs for partners in the area. So again, trying to find where we can direct local community agencies to tap into these resources. As we're hearing it now, a lot of the agencies are putting together their funding criteria, their application process, and a lot of these, particularly the SBA, are starting to roll out here in April. And so some of these will have quick turnarounds. So some of the agencies, including the city and county, are going to have to be nimble to do some of these applications real quick. Particularly when it comes to transportation too, as we're talking about other infrastructure. So those are just kind of the highlights that we want to throw out there that to make people aware that really any kind of program that has received federal funding in the past will get that and more again. But even there's like not a lot of new programs, particularly, we didn't have it on this one, but broadband in particular, because we're still working in Kansas and across the country, understand the importance of connectivity, one for school resources, but just for even employment resources for people to connect remotely. So there's a lot of resources out there that we will try to continue to direct as we learn more. But again, kind of doing this on the fly with the federal government coming up with their parameters and criteria. I know Ron Fear, city manager, has been in tune to a lot of things, and Jason with the SBA and the Chamber of Commerce have been in tune to some of the conversations and programs that they've heard about, particularly PPP is coming out again, and some more grants are coming out related to that. So I don't know if Jason or if Ron Fear, if you had any comments you wanted to add at this point.
Thank you, Dennis. I would just reiterate some of the things you said. Obviously, this isn't all the categories. There's been, as Dennis said, all of the CARES grant eligible programs are, basically CARES Act did about a cup. These are quarts of funds that are being provided. So there's a lot more money in all of those categories. And as Dennis said, a lot of those have a tighter turnaround than some of those direct aid programs versus some of the other programs that are just being stood up that weren't available. There's also an emphasis on the lodging and entertainment and retail and restaurant businesses. So that got hit harder. So there's some, and I think a lot of those are being funneled through the SBA, and Jason might be able to speak a little bit more on some of those.
So we have been partnering with SBA, SBDC on providing some trainings for a lot of those programs. If you're interested, let us know. We've recorded a lot of those. We also have a few people on staff that can help direct that. But I would just say, if you're a business and you've been impacted significantly by COVID, you probably are eligible for something. So give us a shout or talk to your banker, because most of our bankers in Manhattan have done a great job keeping up with all the programs as well. And one of us can direct you to the proper channel.
I would like to add real quick too, from Flint Hills Regional Council, we did receive CARES funding. And so the purpose of that was to gear us up for when this funding started flowing. Unfortunately, that first round, we didn't have the funding yet to really be able to assist, but now we are geared up and ready. We have both myself, Marissa, and then we're hiring another part-time kind of just project-based grant specialist that will be available. So if you are an organization or agency or city that is needing assistance, where you've identified a grant that you're interested in applying for and you feel that you're eligible, feel free to reach out to us, because we can definitely offer some assistance with those applications. Now, because of the volume of funding that's available and the number of applications, obviously it'll have to be based on our availability, and we might reach capacity quickly, but we will serve as many people as we possibly can to assist with those applications.
And Jason, in addition to turning to the chamber and local bankers for information, you would encourage people to go check the SBA website too, wouldn't you? Because they have the whole list of all the programs that they're trying to administer. Is that correct? Oh, you're muted.
Correct. And we also, again, want to remind everybody, we do have an SBDC person here in town that can help and assist with that as well. So yeah, just let us know.
And from the local government, I know Commissioner Ford, and for the city side, trying to figure out again what's eligible and how we can distribute that. A lot of it will help the local governments for some of the revenue that we did not realize due to the pandemic. And so just working to make sure that we have our eligibility criteria identified and then prioritize how we're going to what utilize that money for city services that were impacted by COVID. I don't know if the counties had a conversation yet, just still trying to figure out their approach.
It's been a very primitive conversation, to say the least, Dennis. I think much like the city and every entity, we're kind of waiting to see what specifically those guidelines are. I think in some of the teleconference calls with our national association I've been on, they've been kind of bi-weekly. They do kind of deal specifically with some of the different county related services that are different than municipal and other city local units of government. But one of the, I think, good things here is, and I'm assuming this will be the same for the city and everybody, is the timelines won't be so compact like they were in the fall, where you're dealing with 3 months and you have this allocation. You've got to figure out how it's spent. You got to have everything ordered and everything done by December 31st. And I do believe every indication that I get is that's going to be 2-phased. So you'll get part of the allocation, and that should be good through, I'm thinking it's 2022. And that second part of it will come at a later time in and around that date, and will be good through 2023. So there's a lot of not just short-term impacts that can be taken care of, but maybe some longer-term impacts with that too, over that course of what'll effectively be 2.5 years. So won't be as stressed, won't be as panicked. You can really develop some really good, solid short-term and long-term plans and strategies to best appropriate that money. And then of course the local units of government should be able to work together to not overlap, to stretch out those funds overall to make them work and the best possible approach. So outside of anything else you've said, you've covered the bases pretty well from what I know, but that would be probably the other part that I would add.
Dennis, I have a question. I don't know if Ron or somebody can answer this, but with the Parks and Rec, the summer programs, or, just, with, the Parks and Rec used to have that really fun summer camp for kids, and some of the other activities. So would Parks and Rec at all qualify to help, with opening pools and, things of that nature?
So we think so. One of the things that we're waiting on the guidance for, and we probably won't get it for another month or so, but technically it makes up for lost revenue. And so it uses, we think it's going to be 2019 is the fiscal year for comparison. So there's some, like zoo admission fees, Flint Hills Discovery Center admission fees. There are, and some of the other program revenue that we're used to getting, that might be a little bit more of a issue since we didn't operate the pools. So that might be if you tried to operate it and you had operating losses, then you can claim some of the revenue. But certainly we think some of those costs will be eligible. And some of our other areas where we're down from the state funds, like our transient guest tax funds, special alcohol funds, all of those, we should be able to replenish. So we think that will apply also to this year, because obviously things are carrying into this year. And as Commissioner Ford said, the great thing about this is we have a much later deadline for when we have to have the funding spent by, which gives us time to plan. So if there is an area that the needs not be met, we'll be able to have some potential allocations for some of those areas as well.
Okay, anything else before we move on?
Actually, I will add, Kelly did bring up, and during the childcare conversation, we've already announced from the city side, yes, we are headed towards opening Lisa City Park Pool and Northview Pool. So those will be summer activities. And then we have already taken registration for the Little Apple Day Camp, and I actually have had to create a waiting list. So there are some summer programs that we've already announced from the city side. And if people want to check out the Manhattan Parks and Recreation website, there's still some availability, I believe, in a couple of camps as we're looking through the Discovery Center as well. So there are some activities that we are able to restart this year that we're excited about. Maybe not the full capacity, but compared to last summer, it's a nice way to think about some programming for summer.
And if people are looking for jobs and places to work, I know everybody's kind of saying that too. We could use some more help. So Kelly mentioned the day camp. We're not getting a lot of interest from folks that want to help us run those day camps. So as some of our traditional sources, of course, some of those have been educators, and I'm sure our educators are pretty burnt out and are looking forward to maybe having a summer off. So anyway, that's kind of a task with a challenge, I think, with a lot of sectors of being able to provide and find folks that can work and are eligible to work. And so that's just some of the challenges we're facing with some of those aspects. I guess we didn't mention that, some of those similar categories, the schools, K through 12, as well as higher ed, are all getting another huge round of funding as well. So there's some more information to come, obviously. Thank you.
Okay, it's me again, Kelly. Hello, Miss Talker, Miss Questioner. So I'm just curious, because you mentioned, education and schools. I've been reading a little bit about, I guess, these systems that, sorry, lack of talking skills here today. Air filtration and, that can be into, the infrastructure of, the intake, outtake of your air. And is this something that, Kansas State and our public schools are looking at right now and implementing to kind of help to get cleaner air into the atmosphere, into the classrooms and things of that nature?
I can't answer that specifically, but I do remember a conversation, at least the folks at K-State, that was a big component for them to look at some of their filtration systems to be able to enhance that airflow and filtering components. So my assumption is that they are, and those would certainly be eligible expenses. So what I don't know is whether it's not clear what all the deadlines are for all the different groups. You know, some of the grant programs have their normal deadlines. The city's revenue and then the county's revenue is kind of a new category. So they're giving us more time. I'm not sure about how the deadlines are on the education funding. But good idea, Kelly, because I think those have applications even in restaurants and other places, other public places that potentially could be eligible depending on what some of those retrofits or special filters might be.
I might add on some of those, particularly filtration systems and fans that do all that, there's quite a bit of a manufacturing backlog on there. So, you know, if I would hope that that would be taken in consideration when they're establishing and setting guidelines and deadlines for being able to purchase those and using this funds for, at least that conversation's come up anyway.
Maybe that's a good housekeeping, good housekeeping seal of approval, that, maybe cities and counties or, kind of can come down the road, looking at, because I just think that, that's just something that we're all going to have to face in the future, having brick and mortar, either if it's a, public space through, university and public school, or, just as business owners and, cities, municipalities, with, city halls and offices and things of that nature. But yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts or comments before I give it off to Bob? All right.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. I think everybody's aware that over last year we've had a little uncharted water, just sometimes even knowing what's going on, changes, etc. And one of the things we've been very fortunate in our community is to have a group for our local physicians who came together voluntarily and created a clinical task force, and then have actually been kind of an advisory group to our health department, to our school systems, a number of other groups in our community. And Dr. Ryan Knopp, he's with the Stone Creek Family Physicians, actually is on that group and one of the executive committee are kind of leading that effort. So we thought we'd just ask Ryan on today to kind of do a little catch up, maybe get, I guess, just your thoughts here, Ryan. We're going to put you a little bit on the spot. Kind of what do we think we're seeing locally? Maybe talk about variants a little bit, kind of next steps, if you will. And I think we've had some prior conversation in the meeting about vaccine. I guess any other thoughts you would have about how to encourage people?
Yeah.
Too. So lots of topics.
Yeah, no, great. Happy to be back on. I think sort of as an intro to this topic, I would say just the fact that I'm able to join this meeting is a good sign compared to where we've been over the last year, because as you know, I started in the early days as part of this committee, and then just quite frankly, too busy with everything else with COVID to be able to find the time. So, clearly we're in a better spot locally here with our community now compared to many times over the last year. To say it bluntly, we're not out of the pandemic yet. Obviously, we've got a ways to go on this, but we are in a more favorable spot. If I reflect a little bit on sort of the journey and where we've been, I would say, of course, we all know it's been tough in many ways for all of us. I mean, those of us in healthcare have had our own challenges. I know you all in the business sector and as business owners, families, kids, mental health, millions of more people living in poverty now than a year ago. I mean, there's so many ripple effects of this pandemic. And as you've heard me say before, in family medicine, we're actually uniquely positioned to see a lot of those things and social determinants of health for folks beyond just COVID. So it's been one heck of a tough journey. But if I had a message today, it's cautious optimism. And I'm going to key in on the word optimism, but of course, preface it with a little caution. And that is, I think, first of all, I'm just going to give a huge thank you and kudos to everybody on this call, but really just the whole community of Manhattan, Kansas, because I'm going to just go out on a limb and say, I think we have navigated this thing amazingly well over the last year. And when I say we, I mean everybody, individuals. The Riley County Health Department has done amazing work over this year. Guys, their effort on vaccine distribution recently has been nothing short of astronomically amazing. A couple of weeks ago, I looked at some data, and they were the #1 county in Kansas for vaccinating folks 65 and older, and it wasn't even close compared to a lot of other counties. And that was a couple of weeks ago, and I know data can change week to week, but just at a point in time, amazing in terms of the work they've done. You guys all in the business sector supporting, the precautions and doing things the right way through the community and your businesses. Our school district to navigate what they've had to do through the course of the year. Could we all have looked back, hindsight 2020, in ways we might have done things differently? Sure. But all in all, I would say we've navigated this as a community much, much more successfully and better than, quite frankly, a lot of communities our size and positioned similarly to us. And so, there's a little bit of joy in that, but also understand we still have a road ahead of us. And if I think about the road forward, and this gets to some of your comments or questions, Bob, on variants and vaccines, and that is the race, right? Right now between the variants and the vaccines, we've done a really good job, I think, locally with our vaccination efforts. We've got a ways to go. Right now, we're not seeing much of anything pop up yet in our neck of the woods on the variants. We understand that's different. And my gut feeling is, if I have to forecast, and I've always got to be very careful, because you guys know in this pandemic, you got to be very careful to make predictions, because it's hard to know exactly what's going to come true tomorrow, let alone next week or next month. But I feel fairly confident that the fourth surge that we're seeing in spots across the country will remain a little patchy, like it is now, meaning there's going to be some spots like Michigan and others now where we're seeing a heck of a surge. And maybe there's going to be spots like Manhattan, Kansas, where we see a little bit of a variant surge over the next month, but maybe not tremendously so. Do I think we're ever going to get back to the spot where we were in November, December, January on hospital capacity and challenges? I don't think that's going to happen. Mainly because we're gathering too much immunity, both via vaccine distribution and some natural immunity from folks having had the disease. But I still think in our neck of the woods, we can stay ahead of that race, a little bit with the variants. But again, that's not going to happen everywhere across the country. And the precautions are still important. So back to the point of Manhattan navigating this well. Of course, we in the medical community are super grateful for the extension of the mask mandate. I feel like when we get a month down the road into May, we'll have at least gotten past the highest potential of this fourth surge with variants and know where we're going to stand on that. I'm still optimistic, that when the summertime comes, we can ease some of the restrictions and move forward in ways that make sense towards normalcy. But it's going to take all that. It's going to take, hanging on a while longer with the precautions and, keeping on pushing forward with vaccine distribution to keep things successful, like we have here so far. On the vaccine distribution side, again, the health department's done great. The pharmacies locally are doing a great job on their component of distribution. And then, in primary care, we, like my office at Stone Creek, got involved in the game there kind of at the end of February, and we've been doing a lot of vaccines. As I tell people, in healthcare, it is a lot more fun day to day for our work to vaccinate people than it is to swab noses and diagnose COVID and treat COVID. So we're happy to pivot our time and hours spent on weekdays and weekends to vaccinating folks. It's interesting because like a lot of things in the pandemic, it changes and evolves so rapidly. We've gone in such short order from limited supply, people desperate for the vaccine, to already now, even this week, I'm feeling the supply is more than adequate. And we are now getting into, are we going to find enough people to get this vaccine or take the vaccine? In some ways, like at my office, we're starting to feel a little oversupplied, and I know pharmacies in town are experiencing some of that. And so now it becomes more important than ever to kind of message and reach that last cohort of our community that may be hesitant, concerned, appropriately so. How can we talk to all of our community members about the importance of the vaccine? And gosh, I break it down in pretty simple terms. I just say, first of all, if we all want normal again and want to get out of this pandemic, the vaccine is the way. Yes, the precautions are important for the short term, but long term, it's got to be that the vast majority of us, get vaccinated. And the good news is the vaccines are still very effective against the variants, that we have at present time, especially on preventing severe disease and illness. But the message is, gosh, if we all want normal again, we've got to get vaccinated. If we want to have a normal school year next year, if we want to get together with people at Thanksgiving and Christmas, we have to all do it. It's just going to be part of how this thing is going to kind of come to some better end or finality. The other thing I tell people is, look, literally all the physicians in town got this vaccine at the first opportunity we could. We believe in its safety and its effectiveness. No corners were cut in the development of these vaccines. Only red tape was cut. All we needed was a lot of money and people to make these vaccines happen overnight. And that's what the pandemic funneled into it overnight, was a lot of money and people, where we could cut red tape and just get things done in a more expeditious fashion. I always joke, and Bob will appreciate this, I'm not sure there's anybody in Manhattan, Kansas that spent more hours on COVID than I have, except for my task force cohort teammates, like Kyle Gurl at K-State and Sagan Chase. So when I say I've read every study there is to read, on the Pfizer, the Moderna, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, I poured over the data. Now we have the benefit of months of millions and millions of doses being given. We still believe very much in the safety, and efficacy of the vaccines. And I always tell people, gosh, and this is my in the office conversation now, which is whatever you hear in the media and politics and from your friend next door and your coworker, it's good to ask these questions. It's good to have, skepticism. It's okay. But I'm going to tell you only the perspective from just living this day to day in the world of medicine. And I only have one purpose, which is to care for you and your family and our community. I would not ask you or suggest to you to do anything that I haven't either already done myself, or haven't given to my wife last week, or haven't had my 16-year-old daughter go to Hy-Vee and get her Pfizer vaccine last week. All true. I would not ask you to do anything that I have not already felt very safe with doing with my own family members. So I think if you can boil it down to a personal level like that and give personal stories, and speak to the data and the science and how that just continues to not only look good, but even better the longer that we've done this. To me, those are the keys to kind of overcoming the vaccine hesitancy. And gosh, in medicine, we don't chastise people or be upset if they have questions or criticism. You just want to answer them, meet them where they're at, help them come to a comfort level, and then say, hey, if you want to do this vaccine while you're here seeing me, great. If you want to think about it and call me next week, I'm always here for you. You know my number. You can text me any hour of night if a question comes up. I'm happy to do it in your own time and comfort level. And, that actually tends to work for a good majority of people. We all know there's going to be folks who just never, ever, ever will get this vaccine, no matter how good my sales pitch is, or talking to them. And that's okay. That's human life and existence. We get that. But we don't need 100% of people to take this vaccine. We might need 80+%, to take it to get to where we want to with herd immunity. And I still think that's doable. I think it's feasible. I think it's going to take some work, going forward, but I think it's doable. Let's see. That's everything, I guess, in a snapshot, a quick summary of how I see, where we're at, where this thing's going. Oh, let me make one other comment, because this always comes up in questions. Are we going to need a booster of the vaccine? 50-50 coin flip is my answer. If we were where we're at right now next fall, the answer is B, I don't think we need a booster. But what we'll need to find out by next fall is how long will our immunity last from these vaccines? We know it's a good solid 6 months. And if you watch the data graphs, I'm sure it's going to be longer than 6 months on immunity from the vaccine. Will there be new variants then that are less covered by the vaccine? Unknown. So these are all things we're going to have to judge about August, September, October to decide, will we need a booster? Will we be surprised if we need a booster? Not at all. Will that be a 2-shot thing? Almost guaranteed not. Like that's going to be a 1-shot deal if we want the public to take, another booster vaccine. But the whole point is that just remains to be seen. We don't know for sure, whether we're going to need a booster down the road there. I don't shy away from the mask conversation. I think it's great that we extend it till May. That's fantastic. I'm still optimistic that we can ease some restrictions, when we hit the summer. And then this is just me personally speaking. I'm not speaking for the health department or anybody else when I say my perspective is I haven't diagnosed a single case of COVID this year where I thought somebody got it outside. So I'm not too concerned, quite frankly, about people wearing masks outdoors right now, unless you're going to go to a concert or a packed stadium of people and be yelling and screaming right in each other's faces. If you're going to be in somebody's backyard having a barbecue outside, I couldn't care less, honestly, if you wear a mask. Indoors, I still think we need to wear masks here for a while to get through this springtime and fourth quarter, variant surge, scenario. That makes sense to me. That's always where the highest risk has been for transmission is indoor places, and especially where you're gathering with different people from different households and in larger numbers. Do I think there's a scenario where by the summertime we might be able to ease some of those restrictions? Absolutely. I mean, that's the goal for all of us. If we continue the vaccine rollout and get herd immunity, like we want as we are rolling into the summertime here. So anyways, a couple other commentary things. What else, Bob? Any other kind of questions or things anybody else wanted me to cover while we're talking?
Is it Kelly?
Yeah. Question, so here we are at 30%. Is that correct? That's kind of where we're standing at as a community, 30%?
Yeah.
And so, the hope is to get up to that 80%. When we get up to that 80%, do you feel that it's going to still be necessary to wear a mask, Brian? Because, we have that better herd immunity and protection going on. Just as a business owner, in particular restaurant, do you feel that if we get to that 80%, that, I am going to need to, maybe request that customers continue to wear a mask as they come through the door until they sit down?
Oh, my personal opinion is I'll answer the question no. In other words, no, I don't think we'll need to or have to require masking at that point. If we really have true community herd immunity, then basically we've got control enough of the virus to make those kind of things safer. And back actually how I answer that, Kelly, is like at our office, we ask the same question. Like, when will we in healthcare stop wearing masks and requiring masks for our patients? Well, in healthcare, jokingly, the answer may be never. I mean, we may be doing this forever, but there's actually 3 things that have to happen. We have to get to herd immunity. Everybody that wants a vaccine has to have had the opportunity to get a vaccine. And then you just have to use common sense, which is like, if somebody's sick, they should wear a mask to just not, spread germs around, right? While we're still in this pandemic. If you're somebody who's super high risk and you can acknowledge that no vaccine is 100%, so there's always going to be some risk, and you personally want to choose to wear a mask at that point for your own protection, great. I think that makes sense. So to me, it's herd immunity. It's everybody's had a chance to get the vaccine that wants one. And then we kind of use selective mask wearing, in almost a common sense way, not unlike we would during an influenza, a bad influenza year at that point. But I don't think at that point it needs to be universal or that we need to mandate, indoor wearing at all times. Now the question will come is, when will we hit that point? That's another one of those prediction things that I can't say for sure. I mean, at the rate of vaccinations, of course, originally I was thinking this isn't going to happen until fall, but at the rate of vaccinations now, I'm kind of optimistic it could happen by the summertime at some point. Again, hard to say, with any certainty at this stage.
Anybody else have questions for Ryan? Go ahead, Kelly. I can tell you.
My dog, let's make this a freaking contest. People out there in Manhattan, let's get to the 80%. Let's get to the freaking 80%. Let's do it. Go out and get your vaccine. Come on. I am tired of going up to a table and having to wear a mask. I want my customers to see how happy I am to chit chat with them.
Yeah.
I want to
hear
see
ya.
it. Let's do it. Make a contest. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's my point is like, Riley County is off to such a good start on this. If we can just close it strong, right? Like get this next phase done and all general public and, give enough people time to come to a comfort level who are maybe a little hesitant about it. I mean, I think it's doable that we can be one of the lead counties. And by the way, that's not a small feat, but it's also not a small deal. I mean, literally that can be the difference between us having a fourth surge like you're seeing in Michigan and other places now, and us having literally nothing in that category of a fourth surge. So your point is well taken, Kelly, in terms of, the message, which is it can put us in a good spot and return us closer to normalcy. The more we can push that message and get everybody vaccinated.
Hello, Dr. Ryan. This is Julie Govert Walter.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask, our agency serves people in senior center locations in 18 counties, and of course Riley County here too. What I'm asking is, we're getting lots of questions from older Kansans and caregivers, and they're saying, well, our local, our city or our county, they've lifted the mask ordinances, and we don't want to wear masks at our senior centers anymore. Our agency's policy at those locations is for people to continue to wear masks and social distance as appropriate, because yes, we continue to remain concerned about virus contagion, since we're not altogether convinced that it's controlled, and there are these variants that we're concerned about. And of course, the people that we're serving at these locations are all age 60 or over. I just wanted your perspective on whether this policy is a reasonable one, and if you were a leader in a position of ours, if you would be supporting it, or at what extent would you support it?
Yeah. And by the way, part of my journey in this pandemic, some of you have heard me say this many times, I always try to come to some middle ground on these things. Like, I understand everybody's perspective. I get the request and the desire on those folks' part. The goal for all of us is to come to that point where we're mask free and gathering in normal ways. Absolutely. Like, I support that. I want that to happen. But my answer to your question would be, for the time being, for the moment we're in, where we're still striving for herd immunity and vaccinating the population, I would sure still employ those precautions in that setting. Just like I said earlier, on really any indoor setting. Like, let's just say the city of Manhattan or Raleigh County had not extended the mask mandate, and you guys were all here as business owners asking me, what would you say I should do in the moment? Oh, that's easy. I would be saying, gosh, in the indoor setting, you should still follow all the precautions for now. We've got another stretch to get through here in the springtime for everybody's safety while we're continuing to vaccinate folks. I would sure encourage you to employ the precautions, even when they're not mandated. So to answer your question, Julie, yeah, I would still support things like mask wearing and distancing, at least for this month of April into May. Let us try to accomplish those goals that I laid out earlier from the healthcare standpoint. And then let's all kind of make a decision as we go into the summer. Maybe then we're positioned to where we've got enough folks vaccinated where we can start some of those smaller gatherings more safely. I would say that's the goal. We're getting closer. Let's not quite do it yet and be premature where we have regrets, and look back and say, gosh, I wish we wouldn't have done that a little too early.
Julie, too, I think it really does matter where is that community or that county on their vaccine progression. And are they still only at 10 or 15% versus are they at 40 or 50? I think that is actually we've talked a number of times, I know, on this call over the last couple of months. Those who get vaccinated first will win the economic development race.
Yep.
There's no question.
Thank you.
Dr. Knopp, could you share if there's any updates related to predictions on when we think vaccinations will be cleared for those under 16?
Yeah. So, both Pfizer and Moderna have good, encouraging data. Of course, Pfizer came out a week or 10 days ago with that data. Safety looks fantastic. And basically in that 12 to 16-year-old age cohort, pretty well 100% protective on preventing the disease of COVID. So what we've known all along in this pandemic is your junior high school age kids kind of act like adults when it comes to this virus, both in the ability to catch it, transmit it. They don't get very often seriously sick, but they can definitely catch and spread and transmit the virus. And so it's not surprising to us that the vaccine would work really well in that cohort of 12 to 16. And again, so far the data looks good. We expect in the near future, like i.e. the next month to two, that they'll apply and hopefully be granted authorization by the FDA to deploy that. And of course, that's a common question I get. And I'll answer that in the same way that I said, like I already gave my 16-year-old the Pfizer vaccine at Hy-Vee last week. I'll say my 14-year-old 8th grader, I will give the Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson or a vaccine the day they authorize that. I'll give it in a heartbeat. Now, my 10-year-old, who's in 4th grade, I don't see those kids, elementary age and younger, the studies are already started, like they're studying 6 months to, 12 years old. I don't see those kids being cleared for the vaccine until probably not even the end of the year. It'll probably be like 2022. Wouldn't surprise me at all for the elementary age kids. But the junior high school age, I'm really optimistic that in the next month or two, we'll get a green light on that, because I would love to think that all those kids would have the option and the opportunity to get vaccinated before the start of next school year. That would be a huge win, in this vaccine race against variants. And, we're seeing with the variants that younger kids are catching the variants easier and spreading them. And so I'm hopeful and optimistic, and the answer to your question is within the next month to two.
Thank you.
Other questions for Ryan?
All right. I appreciate the opportunity. And again, I just want to say a word of thanks to everybody here, but also just our whole community, because the beauty about Manhattan, I've said it many times. I mean, obviously I bring one perspective, which is the medical healthcare perspective. I don't pretend that I know everything, and I don't pretend my answer is always the right answer, but I love how Manhattan's able to communicate and collaborate. So it's our, healthcare task force with the recovery business task force, with our health department, with our school district, with business owners. Like, we've all talked a lot to each other over this last year. And I think that's been one of our keys to success on pulling it off pretty well in our community. We all bring different perspectives. We each have a valid, good perspective on this. And we're trying to meet each other a little bit in the middle and navigate a good middle ground through this. So anyways, thanks to you guys for all you do and for letting us communicate and bring our perspective from the healthcare side.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thanks. See ya.
Let you get back to work.
Yeah, that's where I'm heading.
Thanks. Last thing on our agenda, we actually just want to, again, talk about anything new, kind of emerging issues. We are getting scheduled, in about a month. Are there specific topics, ideas, concerns that we can work on in the next 4 weeks to get ready for that? This is always the quiet part of our conversation. So while you're thinking about that, next question before you think about, I guess one, we actually also want to hear, what are people hearing from a business confidence standpoint? What are you hearing from people that you work with, businesses that you frequent, perhaps even your own business? Kind of what are you guys hearing? And I don't know, Dennis Cook, Gina, Fanny, Kelly, kind of what are you guys seeing or hearing from your peers?
On my end, on my end, the conversation amongst my employees, so we're all vaccinated, which we're really fortunate to have that. We are still having some tension between patrons who believe that they do not need to wear a mask We've gotten some patrons who think that if they show their vaccination card, that that's okay to not wear a mask. And so, at this point, we've been able to figure out from a communication standpoint how to do this, how to interact with those patrons, but it is still so draining and so taxing for that to happen. And so, our focus now, of course, we still want to make sure that our employees still feel safe. But the other thing that has been on top of mind and has been talked about on a national scale is the $15 living wage. And as we're and as Dennis Marshall said, there's and others have said during this call, the economic ripple effect is starting to show. It's starting to show amongst my employees who are all college students. Many of them are choosing to not go to college. So many of them are having conversations with me about leaving Manhattan, Kansas entirely because they can't afford to live here. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that, because if they're feeling it, I have a very good feeling that other college students are feeling it, or other people their age are feeling it. And we all know that they are college age students are a significant amount of our workforce here. So those are the concerns that we're trying to navigate right now at Mama Fangs.
So Dennis or Gina, so you both click on.
Yeah, I can happily report that the buzz is in the air, and there are a lot of reports that some of our businesses, many of our businesses, and different business types are experiencing record months. They're definitely in a rush to hire and get more staff brought back on board, no matter what type of business that they are, even if it's running an office or running a restaurant. So all signs for us are pointing towards moving deeper into that recovery pool, feeling pretty optimistic about the recovery. I don't pretend to say that the economy is thriving, but definitely can see that the ship has started to turn. But it's a big ship and it moves slow, but positive direction for us. Definitely want to just take a moment to share very quickly. I've been involved the last 6 to 8 weeks in coordinating vaccine clinics through our local pharmacy, and also with Julie, and most recently with Bob. And what I have been hearing at about that 30% of employees choosing to get the vaccine, the reasons that we've been hearing that they are not getting the vaccine or don't want the vaccine really have been 2 reasons. One is my parents tell me not to, and that would come from a lot of our younger college age students. And number 2 is I've already had the virus. Why do I need to get a vaccine? So it's been difficult and I don't try to educate. I don't think that's my position, but it's been interesting that, we've sort of been in this situation where we had all of these organized efforts that were amazing and great and wonderful to be a part, and so much gratitude to all of the medical community that helped us get our downtown employees vaccinated. But it was sort of disheartening to see such low numbers also on our end. But I understand that's been community-wide. So, and thank you to Dr. Knopp for that great update. Really appreciate it. That's all I have.
I would say, just from an Aggieville standpoint, that the same thing. Economically, we are seeing a real turnaround. Things are getting better. We've had some events We had, we got through St. Patrick's Day and things went really, really well. And, everything we're doing right now is pretty much outside, but we've had real good success, and our businesses are coming back. So it really does feel good. And, can't wait for this to hopefully, these trends keep going because it's perfect for us. So just thanks to everybody.
Lisa.
Yeah, we've been really busy. A lot of new projects and things are happening for both us as a business. Now we have more capacity to take things on. Our clients' projects are ramping up too. We are 100% vaccinated. The final 5 will get their second shot here in a week or two. So it's a great feeling in our office. We're still masking, we're still doing the smart things, but the tension is a lot less. People are a lot less worried. It feels a lot more normal. You can walk around with a mask on your face if you know that really it's the environment you're in is safer overall. So it's good.
Karen, you want to start with Karen, then we'll go to Robin.
Sure. We're beginning to see just a little bit of an uptick, not yet in meetings. Again, I think planners are a little bit cautious with that gathering, but as more and more people are being vaccinated, we're beginning to see a bit of an uptick with the leisure travel. Certainly that is reflected in our STAR report, where we're seeing more activity reflected on our weekends. We've had a couple of weekends that we're elated at, that we've had good occupancy. Several of our hoteliers have said we're really tired because they are very short-staffed and they're having to do from A to Z as far as what is required of welcoming people into your lodging facility. So slowly but slowly, we are beginning to see an improvement there as well.
Now, Robin.
Yes, so what we're seeing is that the number of people who are reaching out for intake assessments is exceeding pre-pandemic rates. We've all talked about and anticipated that at some point there was going to be a massive outpouring of need and request for mental health services, and we're seeing that now. What that means then is that we're frantically working to try to be able to accommodate the need and the request for services. But, go back a year and a half, 2 years ago, what were we doing at the Chamber of Commerce? We were having discussions about the difficulty recruiting and retaining healthcare providers of all shapes, sizes, flavors, specialties, whatever, to the Flint Hills area. And those issues that we were experiencing in this region before the pandemic have just been exacerbated by the pandemic. And so what we're in the middle of doing right now is contracting with businesses that provide mental health services through telehealth to accommodate local demand for services. And my hope would be that the necessity to contract with remote providers to accommodate local needs would be short-lived, because it is more expensive for us to contract with remote providers to meet local need. But at this point, we don't see how we can respond to the enormity of the need without augmenting our staff in that way. And so that's something that we're dealing with right now. The other thing that we're seeing, in this influx of people reaching out for services is that there's an increasing number of people who don't have health insurance. And that's also a dynamic that has shifted a little bit since before the pandemic. So the floodgates are opening, and issues that we had before the pandemic are only greater than they were before.
Robin, I have a quick question for you on the mental health services. So I have a friend who is a military spouse, and when she moved to Kansas, she had an extremely hard time getting a job as a counselor, even though she had her master's in counseling, because she didn't have the hours, and the reciprocity from Tennessee to here just didn't work out very well. And then since then, they've moved to Alaska, and she had a much easier time getting the hours that she needed and the supervision and everything to actually be able to work. Is there anything on the state level with the pandemic, I don't know, nationwide, on addressing the reciprocity issues when it comes to mental health professionals and the hours and everything that they need?
Yeah. Every state has authority over matters of licensure in its own state. And Kansas has safeguarded that authority very tightly. And the story that you're describing, or the situation you're describing, is very common. We're very familiar with providers from other states who are interested in working in the state of Kansas, who can't because they don't have the appropriate level of licensure or haven't met all of Behavioral Science Regulatory Board's requirements. Now, during COVID, some of those requirements were lifted, and providers who were licensed in other states were able to provide services in Kansas, but without a license in Kansas or without BSRB recognition of their license from another state. I think, though, that is one of those requirements that recently was not renewed. And so, although I probably should verify that before I speak with authority on that matter.
I will mention there's a bill right now in the legislature that would, and I'm using Perry Wiggins, who is the state director of military affairs, yesterday at one of our meetings said would take Kansas from one of the worst states in terms of reciprocity agreements to one of the best states in terms of reciprocity agreements. So any interest in that, we can circulate. Yeah. I'll get with Dennis and we can get that information out where that is in the process.
If I could add on,
essential. Yes.
If I could add on to what Jason said, I'm involved with the legislative committee for the Chiefs Association, and law enforcement has had reciprocity provisions for decades in Kansas. And I want you to know that I also have heard there is a bill, an active bill that's been introduced to make Kansas like a lot of other states where this reciprocity is much easier for professionals coming into the state to get licensed instead of having to go through all of the hoops that they do now. So if you are engaged with your legislator or you want to weigh in on it, I would encourage you to do that, because I think the need has now been recognized and been taken seriously.
That's absolutely right. And we shouldn't have to depend on executive orders to increase the number of healthcare providers in the state.
Are there either just kind of status updates or topics to consider for our May meeting?
Maybe we should talk a little bit about the telehealth and seeing if Mike Dotson would have some time maybe to, sit down with us on the next meeting and kind of, chat with some of these issues.
No, good idea.
Well, there are some grants that are coming through. There's a webinar today, and I unfortunately had a conflict, so I couldn't sit in on it, but I don't know if anyone else was able to attend. USDA has a telehealth kind of learning possible grant coming up here soon. So that might help, especially in our rural communities. Manhattan, maybe not, but Riley County, so I think it's for communities of less than 20,000. But that might help to address some telehealth issues, especially in the rural parts of Riley County and the rest of our region.
Dennis, Marshall, or Jason, anything else before we wrap up? So we're scheduled for Thursday, May 13th, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, and I sent out the new Zoom link. Sorry to throw everyone off with canceling meetings and throwing new meetings back on, but appreciate that. And we got your Zoom meetings out there. Should be on your calendar.
Well, we certainly appreciate everybody's time today. And seriously, if anybody knows somebody who would want to be vaccinated, get them in touch with the county health department. They will find them a place. And we literally, something back to what Dr. Knopp said, we at this point, we actually have more vaccine coming in than we're able to deliver, which is a great place to be, but we'd like to be that kind of in equilibrium. So really encourage people to do that. And I think we are good for the day. So thank you guys.